What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And this week, I have a guest that I want to introduce you to. And this man is living all over the world. And in his own words, his favorite country is summer. And so that'll give you an idea of the lifestyle of our guest this week. Now, in this particular conversation, he is coming to us from Bali. And unfortunately, on the day of the conversation, the signal was dropping off just ever so slightly every few minutes or so. And it was quite irritating to have that conversation because just in the middle of the story, some of that content was lost. And so as I've been editing this episode, I've realized that, damn, I'm not able to include quite a few bits and pieces. So forgive me if this interview seems to jump around a little bit and it's a little bit shorter perhaps than I would have liked. But as we go through it, what you'll find is that Rick has got an enormous amount of experience in the real estate industry, and he's got some great insights on things that are, creative ways to finance. And off the back of our recent interview with Ray Glimpf, where we were talking about seller finance, this is an interesting one initially because we're talking about lease options and things like that. And the second thing then is we get into the second part of this conversation is around body language and the psychology and the subconscious way in which the body reacts to your body language. And when you're communicating with somebody, what is often not realized is that only 7 or 8% of the spoken word is actually important. It is actually the other stuff that's going on around the back. And so we're going to get into that conversation with Rick, who was involved in the writing of a very famous book called Body Language by a guy called Alan Pease. And I believe Rick is a contributor to that book, officially listed in the book itself. And so I think you're going to really enjoy some of the tricks. If you want to persuade somebody to do a deal with you or things like that, there's various ways that Rick goes into how that can be achieved. And so, guys, without further ado, my conversation with Rick Otton. Rick Otton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Gavin, buddy. Great to be here.
Rick, you are, you're definitely the first guest I've ever had that's coming in live from Bali. And it's, a lot of guests coming from us, I've had some Sydney and some Melbourne, and I've had some, New York City and various places around the US. But Bali, that's a new one. So why don't you give us a quick intro to yourself and tell us what has you in Bali?
Okay, well, I've been around the property area since about 40 years or something, starting there in Dallas in 89 of the whole We Buy Houses thing, right? And then running that out across the world. And can I just tell you, Gavin, I ended up in Bali by mistake. I had no intention to be here except for 3 or 4 days when I realized Eastern countries have no financing for real estate. You have to pay cash. And I thought to myself, well, hang on, what if I could devise a system in Asia where everybody moving out of the West could get financing to buy properties in Eastern countries? So I've started off here in Indonesia, and then I'm going to Thailand and Vietnam, and I've just worked out how to do financing for real estate in Asia. And it's become addictive.
Wow, cool. And how long are you in Bali now? Many years.
Okay, so no. Look, I'll only be here. I came here, it's like once the job's done, right? So I got to start like Bali property finance kind of stuff. Now I'm in the US in the next couple of months, then I'm back in the UK and then down to Portugal and back around. But my favorite country is summer. So wherever that has to be, I'll be there.
Your favorite country is summer. Yeah, I know a few people that moved to Dubai on that basis. All right, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so, Rick, for the benefit of the audience who will not have heard of you, can you just give us a little bit of backstory? Like, you're in Australia, you're in school. What kind of brought you into property and real estate?
And that was a fluke because I was in Australia. I ended up having a gamble with a guy I lived with, and I had a bet that I could write a song and have it on the radio the next day. And he said, if you can do that, you don't have to pay rent for the next 6 months. I wrote a song. I had no idea how to write a song. Rang up some guys at a radio station, and they recorded the song that night, put it on the radio the next day. I was on TV the next night, and then I was on a record album the following week because the song I wrote was about the premier who was about to be elected So, of course, everybody wanted to hear the song. Right? The song took off. It was called Big Bad Baz. Then George Bush was having the election, and he wanted to know if he could use the copyright for my Big Bad Bush Baz if I'd go to the US and re-record as Big Bad Bush for the US election. Then I was there. Then Fox Television was moving in there, which was an Australian company. And they said, "You're a pretty crazy guy. Can you come up with an idea for a TV program?" I came up with an idea called The Couch Critic. And that ran Sunday night on Fox, and it was being filmed in Dallas. I was in Dallas. I got kicked out of Dallas because I was on a tourist visa. And then I got a media visa, got back to Dallas, married my wife, who then said, "Find a way to make money, or you're going to have to work at McDonald's for $2.19 an hour." And I knew nothing about real estate, Gavin. I had no idea, but I thought, you know what, guys make money in real estate. I've got to figure it out. And then I went to buy a house from a guy for $86,000. And I said, "Look, can you let me pay every month because I'm a bit short?" He said, "How short are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 85,000 short." So he agreed I could pay him $1,000 a month. Told my wife, she thought I was an idiot. I sold the house the next day for $1,500 a month. I made the first $500 a month on a house. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I had so many people wanting to buy this house at $1,500 a month. I got a cardboard box, climbed up in a tree, put We Buy Houses on it to get more houses. And that was 35 years ago. Then I introduced that into the UK in 2002.
We Buy Houses.
Yeah.
That's
so
brilliant.
We Buy Houses, we started there in 2002. I think I did the first big training event on teaching people all these creative strategies in Earl's Court in April 2009.
2009. Wow. Right after the crash.
Right after the crash, I came in there with, I remember I wanted to do lease options. We didn't do lease options. And I said to my guys that I worked in with, I said, "We're going to do these lease options." Do you know what? When I went round trying to find lawyers in 2005, 2006, I could not find one lawyer in the UK that would tell me lease options were legal. And then finally found one firm, right, that did in Manchester. And then, of course, they took off after the GFC, they took off lease options. And now suddenly when the lawyers have worked out how much money there is in doing lease options, magically they're legal overnight and everybody does them, right? But in my day, I couldn't find anybody that would do them.
And so for the people who don't understand what lease options are, just can you give them a brief description of that?
Well, lease option is really just an AST. You're renting the property, but someone has the ability to buy the property. So it's like leasing a car. You're saying, "Mate, rent the property from me, but if you want to buy it down the road, not that you have to, we could just agree on a price now, and some of your rent could go towards buying the house if that's what you want to do." And for a lot of tenants, rather than pay dead rent, they would like the rent going towards buying the house if that's what they wanted to do, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I mean, in terms of just getting into the weeds with that, like, how would you work out how much is going towards the future purchase?
Well, what I used to find was when I tried to explain to people how many different ways we could do it, I found over the years the easiest way for people to get their head around it, I used to say to them, "You know how a bank loan works?" They'd say, "Yeah." I'd say, "Explain that to me." They go, "Well, you pay some money every month and it slowly pays the house off until eventually you don't own any more money." And I say, "That's exactly what we're going to do with this lease option. And we're going to make the payments go towards the house exactly the same as the bank does it." And when I did it that way, it ticked the box for everybody. So I used to just always do the paperwork so that whatever, when you pay your mortgage on the house, that's what goes towards the house. Same with the lease option. And if you want it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or whatever's left, just pay it or remortgage, refinance, whatever.
I suppose it's a good option for people. I mean, I can see some people saying, "Well, I want the money now," and so it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. But
yeah, but where it was very powerful, and I remember I said to my wife in 2009, I had like 300 people in that room, and in those days, all your properties in the UK, the rent was higher than the loan debt, the payments to the bank. And I could use a lease option to assume all the loans. So no one was paying any of the loans. I could use a lease option. So for £1, I could put a lease option in there, make payments on everybody else's house. There was no equity left. It was all debt.
yeah,
Right? The tenant was paying me more rent coming in. And I said to my wife, I said, we might be making the biggest mistake here right now, because we could be buying 700 or 1,000 houses in the UK for £1 each, or we're going to tell these 300 people how to do it, and they're going to do it.
Yeah.
But where it becomes, it's not right. It's not the strategy that I'd use in today's market. In the UK, it's the wrong strategy. But depending on where the market is in the cycle, it can be really great when there's a lot of debt on a property.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debt, not much equity. You can walk in there and people can walk out. You can walk in and just take the property for the debt, right?
Yeah, people want an exit, basically.
Yeah, and then, all loans, and most people don't realise this in the UK, but pretty much all loans are assumable if you just know the paperwork and how to do it. And so you can use a lease option just to pick up the loan debt. If someone's got a £400,000 house with a £390,000 debt bid on it, well, you can just go in there and pick up the payments on the 390, right?
Yeah. And so, Rick, I was looking at you've got two books that you've written before, and
Correct.
one of them is going to immediately be resonate with a lot of our listeners, and that is how to get people to give you money. So
Correct.
let's talk about some frameworks that you have for achieving that.
Okay. So I'm going to take it back a little bit. When I was 18, and most people don't know this, have you ever heard the subject called body language?
Yes.
Okay. I was involved in the writing of the first book on body language in 1978. It came out in 1980. It was written by a guy called Alan Pease. And if you look at that, you'll find I'm an acknowledged contributor to that. Sold over 15 million copies. Then I did talk language in 86. And then I've been doing subliminal science for about the last 40 years. So although I've been a real estate guy, my craft has always been subliminal science, which is the moving of messages between one person and another below the level of conscious awareness. Mm. So, for instance, if I want you to sign a piece of paper and I put it in front of you, Gavin, I'd put it in front of your right eye, not in front of your left eye. If I put it in front of your right eye, you're more likely to sign it. If you put it in front of your left eye, you probably won't. Let me ask you something. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right.
Right-handed. So if I stand next to you, I'll always stand on your left. I'll never stand on your right.
Interesting.
So what happens is when we talk with somebody, only 7% of the communication between two people is the words. But 93% are all the other elements, surrounding elements, that make decisions for people as to whether they're going to do something or whether they're not going to do something.
Yeah.
Right?
So
there's thousands of them. So I can talk to you about talk language like this. We'd have a lot of fun. I can talk about the double shore body language. I can have a lot of fun. But you understand this. So there's languages. So most of us talk words, but I only talk in a constructed sentence, which is designed to go somewhere. It comes across like talk, but it's actually a very highly constructed subject, right? So how you construct a conversation with somebody and the words you use and where you stand is really, really influential to what degree people are going to give you money. So if you and I are going to look at a house together, and unfortunately, we're not in an environment where because I normally put this on a blackboard. I would never have you and I go and look at a house and we would be standing like this, talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
Because
face-to-face.
we can't. I'll never talk with you face to face. Because what happens is I understand zones and territories, and we'll create a little dotted line down the middle between you and I. And that's your side, this is my side, right? So we're going to compete with each other, and we're never going to find easier grants if I want to buy your house, okay? Now, imagine where my head is. This is the house, right? Instead of us standing here, we turned around and we're both looking at the house. Once two guys are looking at the house, the line moves from between the two guys to a line between the house and the two guys. And so now we're in unison together. We see agreements and the house becomes the enemy.
Interesting. Yeah, wow.
Right.
Subliminal, yeah.
A lot of subliminal. That's why, like I always say to people, which room are you in the house? Because there are rooms in a house that people will sign a document and people will not sign a document in another room. And people don't understand the power of rooms. And I say, if you want to know what the power of rooms is this, next time you go to your friend's house, and he invites you in and says, come on in, sit anyway. Go and sit on his bed. And now you'll see what the power of rooms is. People say, what the hell are you doing in the bedroom? So the thing is, you can't get a form signed in the living room. You'll never get a form signed in the backyard, the bedroom. The form always has to be signed at the table, which is usually the dining room table or the living room, because people, when you put them at a table, they're actually their subconscious shifts. And it shifts to the business zone and says, this is the environment I have to be in to sign a document. And if you're not in that environment, they won't sign the document.
Yeah, very interesting. And tell me this: one of the I coach my mentoring clients on something similar, and we talk about building a rapport and all that. And
Yeah.
a lot of the time, you will you create a profile online, and then people you start to kind of do outreach, and people will reach out to you and stuff. But usually, you'll end up sitting across from them in a coffee shop or something like that for your first meeting. Or a hotel lobby or something like that. So give us some tips on what you would suggest in that environment.
Okay, so here's what I do. First of all, there'll always be a zone at a table. The other guy will own half the table, and you'll own half the table. Now, to prove it, to test it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick up the sugar or the salt or the pepper, or from one of those things that's stuck in the middle at the side, right? After you've used it, move it 1 inch onto the other guy's side of his table. Not from just 1 inch. And you watch. Subliminally, he'll push it back 1 inch. So people get really funny about their own zone. So you've got to be invited into the church. So if I want you to read the document, if I try to put a document in front of you, you'll find that that's inside your zone, and you'll shut down and get anxious. Now, when you shut down and get anxious, people won't make decisions. They never make decisions. We're animals. If we get anxious, we shut down. Right. So all I can ever do is put a document halfway across the table, in the middle of the table, and then let you stretch your arms out and you pull it into your own territory in your own zone. I can't do it for you. Now, if I want you to sign it and do this deal, I can't get you to do the deal from me sitting across the table. I'm opposite you. I'm in the wrong territory zone. So what I'll do, first of all, I'll figure out if you're right-handed or left-handed, and then I'll get you to, and then you'll be looking at the form, and I'll try to get you to look at reference things on the form, like paragraph 3, section 2. Oh, no, wait. Now go to paragraph 1, third sentence, or is it the fourth sentence? No, I think it's the second sentence. Now, while I'm doing this, your eyes are going like this all over the form, right? What I'll do is I'll come around the table and kneel down next to you. That gives me the social permission, because I've come around to show you where to look on the form. Do you understand?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Now, depending on if you're right-handed or left-handed, will depend on which side I'll go on. Okay.
So you'll go.
So then what I'll do is, by using a pen.
Yeah.
So if you're right-handed, I'll go to your left. If you're left-handed, I'll sit to your
right.
Yeah. Here's why it's important. If I get the side right, I'm left-handed. Okay. If I get the side right, we'll create a cocoon, and you won't know, but you're going to think, I'm pretty cool, this guy. If I get the side wrong, every time you use your arm, it creates a barrier, and you'll want to argue with you all the time, right? But if I get the side right, we'll just feel like we're in harmony. We're true. We like each other. We're two fun guys. Don't know why. We just like each other. And when I want you to look at this form, it's really funny. I'll get a pen, and people can't read and they can't listen at the same time. It's really hard for the brain to read and to listen. And if I want you to read something and I keep talking, your brain will always default to listening to me, but your brain will always say, I'll read the form later when he's gone, because I can't do two things at once.
Yeah.
So what I'll do with a pen is, people will always follow the end of the pen if you have a lot of fun with this. So I'll say, look, I tell you what I'm going to do. I need you to look at paragraph 2 on this piece of paper. The pen to the piece of paper, the eyes will always follow the pen. You with me? And every time I put the pen anywhere on the piece of paper, when I want to talk, I'll never ever talk when you're reading. And then when I want to talk, I'll pick up the pen. Okay. So as I was saying, blah, blah, and you'll lift your eyes. So when the pen comes up, and now I can control what goes into your brain.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Wow. That's some real deep kind of shit.
Deep shit, man. It's really deep shit. Yeah. There's an old expression that says people won't play chess with it because they move their first pawn and they go, checkmate. Yeah. So it's really a subliminal science, and it can take people to a really, really deep level, right? And just because you'll probably have some guys who will listen to this, you have a lot of fun. You'll know this. You've been out for dinner, right? And you go with your mate, and you might be married, and you go with another married couple, and the bill comes. And the guys normally do this hustle about paying it. One guy goes, look, I'll look after it. The other guy goes, sure. Yes, no, we'll split. No, look, are you sure? I'll look after it. It's called the double sure. I want you to think about this. Next time you go out, listen to two guys talk. One will get the bill, the other guy have to pay. The other guy goes, sure. And the other guy goes, no, we'll split. He's sure. It's called the double sure. Because each guy knows at a subliminal level, the other guy will volunteer twice to pay half the bill. It's just called the double sure. So what you do is, when you get the other guy grabs the bill, and you go, oh, look, let me pay it. He goes, no, I'll look after it. I go, sure. He goes, yeah. Now, he's expecting me to come back for the second sure. But I don't. I just say, look, thanks very much. That's great. Look, I'll pick up next time.
Works.
And then the other guy pays the bill. And his wife goes, why'd you pay the bill? It was £400. He says, Rick offered to pay the bill. He even said he'd pay the bill. And you told him, no, you're going to pick it up. And the guy's thinking, hang on, how did that work? Because I can't blame me. I offered to pay the bill, but you don't do the second sure, right? So it's one of these funny things. But at a conscious level, people don't even notice it.
Yeah. It's amazing what goes on behind. I've studied that, what you were talking about earlier, the body language. And I mean, in terms of communication, the fact that so much of it is written word or spoken word. And then behind that, you've got body language, tonality, the way you look and all that kind of stuff. It all comes into
It's really powerful. There's the amygdala switch. The amygdala switch is just in front of the reptilian brain, in the middle of the head, and it defaults to no. Now, what happens is I've got to construct a conversation, speak to your frontal lobe, which is at the front here. That doesn't have the word no in it. So if I reframe a conversation, speak to your frontal lobe and to the reptilian brain, but if I understand that the switch is always default to no, I can say, you know what, I was thinking if you paid for dinner, that wouldn't present a problem, would it? And I've already framed, as soon as you say no, your brain will go, no, you've said yes. Let me ask you just, if just suppose you had to pay for dinner tonight, that wouldn't present a problem, would it? No.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So,
I've heard there's the techniques that people talk about, in terms of sales and stuff, and that you should get everybody saying yes, and then you get into that kind of pattern. Do you believe that works?
No, I think that's at a pretty amateurish level. I'd like to go much deeper than that. Understand that just words is about to see. Here's the thing: people don't make any decision with their brain. Okay, people think they do, but they do not. The subconscious makes all our decisions and sends an instruction to our brain. Right. The brain is just the secretary. So I never speak to the conscious mind. Like, for instance, if I turn up at your house and I knock on the door and you open the front door, the first thing I'm going to do is start wiping my feet. So as soon as you see me wiping the feet, people go, oh, yeah, come on in. Right? But if I didn't wipe my feet, you might have said, what do I want? And you wouldn't have invited me in.
Yeah.
But I didn't speak to your brain. So I didn't speak to your brain. I spoke to your subconscious. Every decision we make is based on emotion, not logic. We find the logic later. And let's face it, if we thought we made decisions based on logic, we'll all be single. But the thing is, all our decisions are based on emotion, right? And it all comes from the subconscious mind. So I'm not into all that stuff. I would rather speak to your subconscious, and I can, because every emotion, I can control every emotion, and then that'll give instructions to the brain as to what to say or do next, right? Yeah. So that yes. Look, I've said it, I've heard it, but the closest I've come to is this: if you said to your wife or your girlfriend, and you said, "Babe, I love you," what do you think she'd say back?
I love you too.
Correct, because what you did was you hit what's called embedded script. When you implanted "I love you," what comes back is "I love you too." So there are certain things that are what's called embedded scripts. So you can actually control what your partner says, business partner or other, what comes out of their brain based on what you put in. But it's a little bit like if you say, and you've done this, you've heard that people do this all the time. They go, what colour's snow? And people say, well, it's white. Then what colour's snow? White. What do cows drink? People say milk. Well, they don't. It's water. But you've set that
Yeah,
up by
yeah.
what words go in, right?
It's funny.
It's
I
not words
heard
come
that
out.
before talking about if you're let's just test it here, okay? So traffic lights. I want you to think of traffic lights, going from red to green and the amber and stuff like that. And then if you're thinking about that, what is the first vegetable that comes to mind?
Carrot.
That's what I have it written down here. Carrot is what you're going to say.
I'm going to give you 4 words in 4 seconds. Write the answer out. What's the first flower, first vegetable, first piece of furniture, first wild animal? And they always come out with carrot, rose, chair, and tiger or something, right?
Yeah,
And the point I was trying to make is that I can control the language that comes out of your brain if I'm controlling what goes in.
got it.
So I totally understood a bit about the yes, 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 but I'd like to be a bit more subtle, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
know that but by the same token, I have this thing called pineapple words that if I put the wrong words into your brain, I'm going to upset the system. So if I say the word contract, for most mums and dads, they'll freak out because they don't understand contracts, it's legalese.
They're
So I
concerned.
never
Yeah.
use concerns, anxiety comes out, stress when people get anxious, they won't make decisions. So I've never used a contract in my life. I tend to just use a piece of paper with some writing on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's use a piece of paper with some writing on it. What's a contract?
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
never see solicitors, but I always go to the guy up the road who knows more than I do,
Yeah.
and he'll write it down for us in such a way that we both understand.
Simple language. It's funny.
Solicitor.
That's what people say when you're writing that you
Yeah.
should you can actually use an app on the computer called the Hemingway app, and it actually shows you how to simplify it down to fifth grade level or something like that.
Yeah, when we did body language back in 1980, if you look at the original body language book, and you'll see everything's like 2 syllables and 8 letters designed for a 12-year-old, because there's a reason for this. When you keep a language palette simple, even though like I know you're a really smart guy, it wouldn't matter if you're a doctor or a lawyer, I'll talk to you like you're 12, and here's why. If I talk to you like you're 12 with simple language, you can process real easily. And therefore, I can ask you to make a decision at the end of the conversation because your brain has finished processing. When I try to impress you with jargon and call it 2-1 buy downs and we're going to go a renovation and the second tier, blah, blah, to try to impress you, what I'm now asking your brain to do is meet up with a whole bunch of other people in the brain department, go to the library, look up what I'm talking about, have a meeting, come down, but meanwhile, I'm still talking. So when I get to the end of a conversation and I'm trying to get you to make a decision, you can't. You're going to say to me, let me think about it. What you're saying is, I haven't finished processing all the crap. You get it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
when I
yeah,
wrote the book, how to get people to give you money, there's, I don't know if you've seen, there's 3 things that there's a lot of cartoons, because with the cartoons, I can give you a visual image with a cartoon and people just get it. They don't have to read 1,000 words. So it's full of cartoons that each cartoon, I'm making a point, right? But the cartoons are funny. They're somewhat sexist, politically incorrect, but they make the point, but it saves you writing 1,000 words. Plus, it's all in 2-syllable, 8-letter, 12-year-old language. And no one has ever said to me, excuse me, could you reprint this book and make it more complicated for me, please?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, yeah, it makes it real easy for people to think. But it's like, but I'm always really big about, and one of the other things I find people don't understand is they don't understand human zones. And human zones from the body to 3 inches out is intimate, which means only family can go there and lovers. The next 1 foot out is private. That's why we shake our hands with a bend up. And after that's public zone. And if you want to have some fun with this one, this is great. Everybody stands outside a lift and talks, chat, right? Except we know that humans, not just all animals, shut down when they feel anxious. When we all go to a lift, we're all on top of everybody's zones.
Yeah.
So we're invading each other's zones. So we all get very quiet and we shut down, right? Now you get a lot funny. When people start to get out of the lift, okay, you can test this, what you'll find is the guy next to you will move away to get more space in the lift to buy back his zone. You understand? What I want you to do is keep looking at your mobile phone and just move with him. So as he moves around the lift, just
Close
move
into
around.
his
He
space.
won't. And you won't even realize what you're doing because it's a subliminal level. We go, you'll think there's something wrong with this lift before we jump out the next floor.
Get the lift for yourself. And tell us, Rick, when we started the conversation before we hit record, I remember you were talking about this Western move, this move from west to east.
Yes.
I'm interested to just explore that a little bit. Tell us more.
Okay, well, in the West, the population base is over the age of 35. In the East, the population base is under the age of 35. Now, that's important because the most productive economies in the world have young populations. If we talk about the Indonesian population, this will blow you away. 277 million people. But you know what? Only 8% is older than 60.
Wow.
So these Asian populations, not only are they very young, but what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years? The technology has caught up that they've all got 5G. They've got the faster internet than the West. In actual fact, in Korea, it's like 1,000 up and 1,000 down. You get sucked into your dashboard using your laptop. All the train systems are super modern, and all the bus systems are super modern. There's no crime. There's no depression in Asia. There's no mental illness, anxiety, blah, blah. Everybody speaks English. No drug. And so because the tax rates are so low, 10, 15%.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the West is going, hang on, we're paying 40% in the West. And this happened back from 1913. 1913, the average person in Britain only lived to about age 55. And so they said, well, we'll make the old age pension 60, 65, but now everybody lives to 84 or something. We've got all these benefit systems that someone's got to pay for. And Australia's the same, US the same. And now Asia doesn't have any of that. So their tax rates are super low. When I was in Thailand, I think the tax rate was 7%. And so now you've just got all these people who are on nomads on their phones, on their smartphone. And I'm thinking, you're in the UK and I do a deal. I make $1,000. I pay $400 tax. I'm in Dubai. I paid no tax. I just went to 9%. If I'm in Indonesia, I pay 5% tax on the same phone call on 5G. Yeah. So a lot of people are starting to question where they're living and why. And we're seeing very, very large amounts of the middle class that are now moving from Western countries to Eastern or other parts of the world where they're still working the same way, but they're just finding it's more favourable.
There's definitely more favorable taxes and things like that. Like here in Ireland, I'm paying 52%. So it's actually heavy going. But the funny thing is what you're describing is very much what I see. But we have got a population explosion here. Like we have got people coming to the country, migrating to the country, and the population is just growing faster than it ever has. And so it's interesting that, we're one of the few countries in the whole of Europe that actually still has a youngish population and is...
Yeah, I've been watching this in Ireland. Yeah, I've been watching this, yeah. You guys have done some very smart stuff with your government, your taxes and stuff like that because, there's an old expression that says capital will always flow to where it's treated best.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? And definitely, we have all the tech companies here that are all registered as their, this is their headquarters and stuff. So there's a lot going. But having said that, we're feeling the growing pains because the health system here is just crap. There's huge delays. You go to the hospital to get something done, and 12 hours later, you haven't even been seen yet. And it's kind of crazy like that. And then the housing is just the shortages are crazy.
I have various places in different parts of the world, and I think I want to give people some perspective. I was in Bangkok recently, and Bangkok's not the old Bangkok it used to be 10 and 20 years ago. Thailand's decided they're taking on Singapore and Hong Kong. They've just changed that place. Their hospitals are so new and so advanced that I went in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they said, "Mr. Otton, we need to have an operation." I said, "Well, you have an operation?" I had a toe. I won't bore you with it, but here's what's interesting. He said, "Well, I'll get you to see the surgeon at 10. We'll operate at 12, and he'll be out by 3. So I had the whole surgery, 6 people in a theatre, right? And I walked out and I said, "How much is that?" He said, "It's $500 US." Now, for $500, I was into a surgery, in a theatre, out by the end of the day, right?
Wow.
All American, British doctors, all this stuff, right? And all super modern. And our medical tourism is one of the biggest driving forces now of money into Asia, where all the American hospitals have gone in. All the foreign doctors have moved in because they don't want to pay $400,000 a year in insurance premiums. Super, super modern hospitals, medical tourism, and that's how they're capturing some of the stuff. Because you remember, the West is an aging population. And what they want to capture, they want to capture the brains from the West, and they want to capture the capital from the West. So the way to capture the brains from the West and the capital from the West is make it so desirable with low taxes, awesome medical facilities, everybody speaking English. And, if I give you a bit of perspective, people say to you, how often do you come back to the UK? And I'll say, look, this is an interesting sums up for people. If I make $1 million this year as an Australian resident, out of my $1 million, I'll pay 412,000 Australian dollars in tax on that million. Do you realise that is a first class round the world airline ticket for the next 20 years of my life in 1 year's taxation? Compared to Asia, where it could be anywhere about 25 grand, right? So where I happen to be in Bali, which I just stopped in on, was the 5th fastest growing residency of people in Bali are English and Irish.
Wow, English Irish.
Yeah, it's like someone got the email, someone sent out the post-it note, and all you guys have read it, right? We'll pile it in. But it's just not here, but it's happening in, Vietnam is now the biggest powerhouse in Asia. It's what an entrepreneurial city that is. And then Thailand got whacked. They had 93 million people for tourism prior to the pandemic. Now, they lost that market. So they've just turned around. They've taken all the manufacturing out of China. But again, Asia's, because 10 or 15 years ago, these countries had weird tin pot governments and did wacky stuff. Yeah. But, 1/3 of Bali, is like Leicester Square in England. It's all Westerners, all high 5-star restaurants with the people driving Mercedes and Porsches and Rolls Royces. I mean, 1/3.
Wow.
So it's just changed. Yeah, it's just changed.
That's fascinating. Tell us, Rick, I'm looking at the clock. What I'd like to do is some takeaways that I always ask. You're now at the age that you are. I won't pry any further than that, but it's been a few years since you were 18. And if you were giving advice to your 18-year-old self today, what advice would you give yourself?
No one knows anything, right? And look, I've trailblazed a lot of stuff over the years, and I've found that just a lot of people don't know anything, right? Like, got some stories I've got other podcasts. Lease options are illegal in England. Well, no, they're not, right? And I would say hang out with people who represent where you want to go, not where you've been. Because they always say it's absolutely true. You are your 5 closest friends. And you say, well, I'm in Bali, because right now, 13% of the world's smartest people, who are the nomads, have moved here. So you've got this incredibly high concentration of business owners and entrepreneurs all together. Now, that will change over time. But I always say, hang out with people who represent where you want to go. Because you know what? They just say smarter stuff. They do smarter stuff. And they give you smarter stuff to read. And I don't know, it's just a better vibe. So, and look, there's nothing, you know what? If you're not passionate about it, don't do it.
Yeah.
A lot of guys do a lot of guys do stuff that they just don't like doing. Just get passionate about it. Because here's the deal. Here's the last thing. If you're passionate about it, you'll do it more often. When you do it more often, you get good. When you're good, people always pay for the best. Remember, no one has a heart attack, falls on the side of the road and says, could you get me to the cheapest doctor? So the thing is, when you're really good at something, and in fact, you'll never see it as a job, right? Now, look, I love doing creative stuff in the real estate space because I just thrive on the fact of what no one's ever done before. But it's incredibly passionate for me, and breaking the rules and changing the rules. And so let's do this now, creating new normals, right? But I'm really passionate about it. So I just go, do what you love. God, do what you love. So many people don't.
Life's too short.
Yes. Okay, we don't get to go for a second innings.
Yeah, this is not a dress rehearsal, as they say.
Nah, no, mate. I tell you, wow. And think young. I mean, I'm 104. And look at me.
You're in great shape for 104. Rick, what's the best way for people to find you, reach out to you?
Look, I tell you what, if you go rickottonofficial.com, rickottonofficial.com, and I tell you what, there's a lot of things that we've talked about tonight that people can download at this point in time off rickottonofficial.com. And I've got a lot of resources there. Yeah, rickottonofficial.com. And there's a lot of resources there that that really that people can't get elsewhere. And so they're available for people just to download. But it'll start taking them on a journey of some of the things that we've talked about today, especially when they can start changing the way they communicate with people, because they can make massive changes to the response rate you get on transactions.
Brilliant. Well, Rick, it's been a real pleasure. We had some glitches with the comms, but I think I can tidy that up. And so thank you so much for your time. And
well, thanks, buddy, pal.
I think we'll bring you back. I think I'll bring you back we'll have a talk on creative real estate made easy.
Well, there we go. We'll talk about some actual strategies next time, right?
That's a great plan. All right, Rick, thanks
okay,
a minute. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rick. I found his personality to be very, very engaging, and he was a good, funny guy to talk to. And he is actually in Ireland and the UK quite a bit. So he's going to reach out the next time he's in town, and maybe we'll have a second conversation in slightly better circumstances that I don't have to edit down so deeply. He did mention his website there. I'm going to share it below. And if you go in there, it's really interesting. He does have a free downloadable book and a few resources like that. So go and check it out. Until next week, catch you later.